We've had lots of requests for some more information about our boat Florence, so if you'd like to come aboard, we'll show you around.
We live at anchor on Florence pretty much all the time, so getting to and fro always means a dinghy ride. This is basically our car. So this is us. Welcome to Florence.
Welcome aboard! We lived aboard for nearly 3 years now and we absolutely love her. So let's show you around.
Florence is an Oyster Heritage 37. She's 37 feet long. She was built in 1985 and she's number 6 of 35 that were built. We've got a little plaque here from when she was built.
Let's start with a tour of the deck. Make sure you watch your feet on this Genoa car. We must have stubbed our toes on it for at least the first 6 months of having her, and it really hurts. The grey stuff under your feet, that's Treadmaster. It's a non-slip mat. It's absolutely fantastic. We have never slipped. We love it. These yellow lines that you can see running up and down the boat, they're our jack stays. So when it's windy or it's rough, we wear a harness and we clip onto these so we're attached to the boat at all times. This is the bow. So this is our anchor locker. We have a 20 kilogram spade anchor. You can't see it at the moment because it's currently on the bottom doing its job. And we also have 60 meters of 10mm chain. Both the chain and the anchor are slightly oversized for Florence's size, so it means that the anchor holds really well. This is our new Maxwell electric windlass. We fitted that in New Zealand. It makes life so much easier on board. It's brilliant. This is our Genoa. It's on a roller furling system, which means that it's really easy to reef. So if we want to make the sail smaller when it's windy, we just pull this string from the cockpit and it will reduce. We've also got an attachment point for an inner forestay, which Matt will show you where we normally keep that.
So this is where we keep our dinghy. She bolts onto these blocks here and she sits over our forehatch. We try and keep the decks clear of everything except the dinghy and the dinghy mast because they won't fit down below. We like to have everything off the deck, so if it's windy, nothing in the way. Going back, this is the inner forestay that we attached to that point Amy pointed out to you just now. We use this to fly our storm jib from when it's really windy. Here we've got the spinnaker pole. This comes down and points out from the mast, and we use it to hold out the corner of the spinnaker or the Genoa when we're going downwind. Our mast, Florence has an aluminium mast. It's keel stepped, which means it goes all the way down through the hull, down to the keel through the cabin. The mast is about 15 meters from the water to the top. On the mast we have 3 winches. This one's for the spinnaker. This one just we use for the topping lift. And this one we use for the Genoa halyard, although that is permanently up, so we don't really use it very much. This is our mainsail. We keep it covered up to keep the UV off it because that can really damage sails. Originally Florence had all the reefing lines would have come and been used here, so you'd have to come up to the mast to make the sail smaller, but thankfully the people before us, they rerouted everything so all these lines now come down through these blocks and they go all the way back to the cockpit, so we can now do absolutely everything back in the cockpit, which means it's really safe. If it's rough, we don't have to come out of the cockpit. Florence has an aluminium tow rail running all the way down the gunnel. It's really useful for attaching things like this block, which we use to fly the spinnaker.
This is our cockpit. This is where we spend most of the time, both when we're sailing and at anchor. And Florence had the biggest and the safest cockpit out of any of the boats that we looked at before we set off. So as you saw earlier, All of our sail controls lead through back into the cockpit, so it's really safe if we want to reef or control any of the sails from here. It can look confusing, but we generally remember which one does what. We also control the sails from these primary and secondary winches. So our genoa sheet is on here. And then we use this one generally for the spinnaker and also for the reefing line for the genoa.
So this is where we steer from, fairly conventional really, and we have a compass here so we can see where we're going. But when we're doing long passages, there's no way we really want to stand here and steer for the entire way. So we actually have two other ways we can steer Florence automatically. First one is our Aries wind vane self-steering. So this is our Aries self-steering. It's a mechanical vane gear and we absolutely love it. So we have this wind vane which slots in here. And this is a mechanical self-steering system. It doesn't use any electrical power whatsoever, just uses the power of the wind and the water to pull on these ropes which lead around the boat and pull on the wheel to steer us one way or the other. Once we've got it set up, if the wind blows too much from one direction, it pushes this one way. If it blows too much to the other, it blows the other way, and the steering wheel will steer corresponding to this. It's done pretty much all of the sailing we've done so far. Whenever we're sailing offshore, we always use this, so it's done well over 25,000 miles now.
So this is the other way that we can steer Florence automatically. This is our electric autopilot, so we can set a wind angle or a heading that we want to steer to, and it will do it automatically for us. But this obviously uses quite a bit of power, so we power this using our solar panels, which Matt will show you.
These are our solar panels. We have two on board Florence on top of the bimini. We've got 250 watts in total and they provide all of the power we need on Florence for everything, our autopilot, our fridge, our instruments, absolutely everything. We've never had to run a generator or anything to generate extra power. The only problem is if it's not sunny, but happily we're chasing the endless summer, so we've always got sun.
As well as supporting the solar panels, we get fantastic shade from this bimini. It's also really strong. We've had it up in 50 knots and not had any problems. We've got a link piece that comes and attaches from here to the spray hood, which gives us great shade, which we really need in the tropics. That's better. Right, lockers. Florence has two huge cockpit lockers. One right here in the cockpit and one at the stern, which is our lazarette. It's absolutely full of stuff at the moment, but if we emptied it out, you could fit about 3 people in here. It's huge. It goes all the way down to below the water. This is our lazarette at the back, and it's the same size as the cockpit locker. Again, absolutely full of stuff. We've got 2 of our spare anchors, fenders, lines, 2 kayaks, and paddles, yeah.
Spare
Too much
snorkels,
stuff.
everything. Yeah, we need to reduce that.
On the floor of the cockpit, underneath this panel, is where we keep our life raft. Hopefully we'll never have to use it. This is a dedicated gas locker where we keep the gas we use for cooking. It's self-draining, so if there's a leak, it all goes overboard. We tend to carry about 2.5 months of cooking gas on board when we're full.
Instruments, not the musical kind. Starting on the left here, we have our chart plotter. On this we display electronic charts, and we have pretty much the whole world on electronic charts, so we can go anywhere. It's a pretty old model. It came with the boat. It's not touchscreen. Sometimes that catches us out when you're used to using other devices, but it's been really reliable so far, and it basically works like your GPS in your car, your sat nav. Here we have our depth gauge. So it's really important for us to know how deep it is so that we don't run aground, especially as a monohull. We draw 1.6, 1.7 meters depending on how much food and water we've got on board. This one tells us how fast we're going. This one here is a GPS readout. So we put our waypoints of where we want to go across the ocean into this, and even when we can't see a landmark on land to aim for, this has got our course that we should be sailing on, and it also displays the course, the GPS course that we are actually sailing. So we just make sure those 2 numbers match, and then we should end up where we want to be. On the right we've got two wind instruments. This one is a zoomed in version of this, and you can see that at the moment we've got 5.3 knots and it's coming from 150 degrees, so that's pretty much behind us. The data for this comes from a little wind station up on the top of our mast. And if you come down below, there's a couple more instruments at the chart table. So on the port side of the boat we have the chart table. So here we have the barometer, which is useful for knowing where the pressure systems are. Obviously a plunging barometer means you've got a storm coming. It also gives us a nice handy readout to make sure it's not too cold. If it's too cold we go back near the equator. We have a battery monitor, so really important when you're in a cruising boat. Those solar panels are charging our batteries and we need to make sure they don't drain down too much. So we keep an eye on that here. And then we've got various switches to turn on all the navigation lights, water pumps, etc., radar, all the switches. Along here we've got our radio, VHF radio, so this is how we communicate with other boats, and if we have a problem then we would communicate with emergency services this way. We have a HF radio receiver, and then we have our AIS transponder, so this transmits our position to any other ships out there and we can receive their position as well. Helps avoid collisions, especially in the dark. And another GPS, so we've got many GPS units on this boat. If any one breaks, won't be a problem, we've got other ones. And then here at the chart table, this is where we sit. We've got a computer here and we use this for multi-purpose. It's our chart plotting, which is a bigger screen than the one on deck and much easier to use because we've got a normal mouse and keyboard. And we also do all of our video editing for these videos sat here on this computer. Chart table does lift up. Yep, that's enough of that. Organised chaos on there. We do have paper charts, so if everything goes wrong with our electronics ones, we would be able to navigate, hopefully, back to land safely. We also have a repeater for all of the instruments that you saw up on deck. You can just cycle through the outputs of any of those by pressing the buttons here. That's really handy when you're filling out the logbook. You don't have to go back up on deck and read it out from there. So down here we have the switches for our battery banks. The batteries are actually strapped down underneath this bunk, while one of the many new things we put on before we left the UK and Florence. We actually use 6-volt golf cart batteries, so they're really good for deep discharge, and we have a really large bank, so we never have a problem for not having enough power. And then we also have loads of storage under here, fishing gear, and we keep all our life jackets in here, so they're easy to access, and 1,000,001 shoes in here. So this area on Florence actually closes off. There's a door here and there's a panel that slides up there. So this becomes a cabin, and you might be wondering what's behind the mysterious curtain. Well, that's basically our garage. It is a berth. It's about a 1.5 person berth. Amy and I have slept in there when we've had guests on board, but it's pretty tight. We've got 2 folding bikes, the rudder and dagger board for the dinghy, the sail and the boom for the dinghy, umbrellas. That's how we avoid having any junk on deck. We have it all down here and it's all strapped down back there so that it doesn't cause a problem if there's any rough weather. Let's move over to the starboard side now in the galley, where Amy does the vast majority of the cooking. She is a much better cook than I am.
Florence has got a great galley. It's really safe when we're at sea. I can always find some way of wedging myself in so I'm not getting thrown around, and I can access everything within reach from here. We start in the corner. This is a wet locker, so we can store any of our wet foul weather gear, which we rarely wear. And then we've got covered with some pots and pans. Food back here, and food in here, and this all goes right back to the side of the hull, so we've got lots of space. We've just got the one sink and fresh water taps. So this is a hand pump, so it uses less electricity, and it means if we do have a problem with the electrics, we can also always access the water from our tanks. We've got more storage under here, which tend to just keep like spare cooking stuff and some food. And then the stove, which is absolutely fantastic. It's gimbaled, and we've got some fiddles to hold the pans on, so unless it's really rough, everything stays in the pot. And then we've got a grill and the oven. It's a gas oven and there's no thermometer or thermostat, and it's pretty small, so it took some getting used to cooking in here, but we cook pretty much everything that you'd normally cook at home. So bread, roast dinners, cakes, all in this oven. It's perfect for two. So underneath this countertop is our fridge. We fitted a new one before we left the UK and it's really fantastic. It's really efficient. It's very deep, goes down to about my knees, and we stack it with storage bins so it's easier to access the stuff that we've got in here. There's probably about 4 of these in total in terms of size, so it's pretty good. We don't have a freezer on board, so we tend to just try and keep things fresh for as long as possible. I've normally got some nets for vegetables strung up here, but I tend to just use those when we're on passage. So moving into our saloon. This is basically like our living and dining room. We've had 8 people fitted around this table. You could probably fit some more, but it'd be a bit of a squeeze, and the oven is probably the limiting factor. These bunks are long enough to use as a sea berth, so you can sleep along here and at the other side. This is where we sleep when we're at sea. We have some lay cloths underneath the bunk, which attach here and here. And this stops us falling out of bed when the boat's rolling. Florence is our home, and for us it's really important that she feels that way. So you might notice a couple of things that we have. This is a painting that Matt's dad actually did. The original's at home, and it's of the 2007 Fastnet race that Matt was on this boat here. This is Colin the conch. You might remember from our sandblast video. I hate to say, spoiler alert, we ate him. Underneath the main saloon bunks are Florence's water tanks. She holds half a ton of water, so 500 litres, which can have us going over a month between filling up water tanks. Under this side and this side we have storage for mainly for tools, and then even more back here. Florence has a ton of storage. This goes all the way back, and we tend to store anything that we can't fit in the general cupboards in here. So sometimes it's food, sometimes it's tools. At the moment it's wetsuits. These sliding doors have even more storage. This one's fairly clear at the moment.
That's because you tidied it up.
But you can see that it is a long way back. And then it's the same at the other side. So on this side I tend to keep all of the food because it's closer to the galley and much easier. So in here and here. And then Florence has got tons of storage for books, which is great for us because we love reading. And then Matt will take you further forwards to the bow.
On the starboard side we have the drinks cabinet. Sadly no drinks. We use this as our snacks cupboard. When we're sailing at night offshore, always get hungry in the midnight watches. So this is where we come to have a cheeky midnight snack. Amy's really good at art. She loves doing some artwork, same as my dad. So these are some paintings and pictures that Amy keeps here. And down below we have a cupboard which is normally full of tins and food. And then another drawer with more storage there. And on the right is the head, which is a nautical term for bathroom. So this is the loo. It's actually quite spacious. Sink and shower head lifts out of here. And then we've got plenty of storage behind and below the sink, and a nice secure toilet, which is important when you're at sea. You need to have something to hold on to. Yeah, so excuse me.
So this is our bed. So this is where we sleep when we're at anchor. It's bigger than a queen at the top, but it's pretty small at the bottom, so we tend to fight for foot space. On both sides of the bunk we've got even more storage. So this is where we keep any spare clothes that we don't wear very often, our towels, sheets, and then under the bed the storage goes all the way down to the bottom of the boat. So here we've got our storm jib, our spinnaker, spare lines, and our holding tank. If you don't know what that is, I don't really want to tell you.
So on this side we've got a bit more storage. This is my little cupboard. Everything's stuffed in, it all falls out when you open the cupboard. And then Amy's massive cupboard full of beautiful dresses. Yeah.
None of your stuff in there?
And no, none of my stuff in there. And then another cupboard here, which I'm not really sure what's in there. Stuff. Lots of stuff.
He's got more clothes than I have.
No, I haven't. Mine is just bigger. Last but not least, the engine. So Florence's engine is behind the steps here, which were recently nice and varnished, so I'll be careful with them. So both of the side panels come off so we can get full access all the way around the engine, which is great when it comes to servicing it. It's pretty shiny still. It was brand new when we bought the boat, and if you watch our videos you'll probably realise that we really don't like motoring. We're quite prepared to sail along in very little wind, so it doesn't get much use, which is why we've only done 430 engine hours and 390 of those since we left England. It's a nanny, it's 37.5 horsepower, and it's been superb. Only one small reliability blip when we came into Australia, but that's all working absolutely fine now and we love it, but we don't like using it.
Can I get you a cup of tea? So what have we missed? There's a couple of things that we couldn't show you. Underwater, Florence has an encapsulated keel, which means that it's moulded into the hull in the moulding, so there's no bolts, so there's no danger of the keel falling off. Florence also has a skeg-hung rudder, which offers some protection to the rudder if we were to ever collide with something. Florence's hull is made from solid fiberglass. This is a plug that we drilled from the hull before we left the UK to fit the keel cool fridge, and as you can see it's 18mm thick of just pure solid fiberglass.
So what don't we have? We don't have a water maker, we don't have a freezer, and we don't have a generator to power those previous two items. Florence is a fairly simple boat and we like her that way. It means there's less to go wrong, less to maintain. The only problem is we don't have any ice to go in the drinks, which is why we drink tea.
But we do love the fact that she sails so well. We love the fact that she's a safe blue water cruising boat, and we love the fact that she is a really comfortable home for us.
So that wraps up the boat tour. We know that we have skimmed over some bits, but I think by the time we finish editing this video it's going to be quite a long one.
Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, and we love reading all of your comments, so we'd love to hear what you think.
So next time it will be back to normal service. We will be sailing down the east coast of Australia towards Sydney. See you next time.